Welcome to Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. This show is brought to you by Simplifying, which has been helping build trust in travel for over a decade. Through in-depth conversation with aviation leaders, Sustainability in the Air breaks through the current clutter and provides a clear roadmap for the future. It's about time we embarked on creating a net zero future for the industry, together. This season of the podcast is brought to you by Carbon Click, leaders in managing carbon offsetting programs for top global airlines. Without further ado, here is your host, Shashank Nigam, CEO of Simplifying.
Welcome to another episode of Sustainability in the Air, and today we are with Christoph Wolff. Christoph used to be with the World Economic Forum's executive board and was instrumental in setting up the Clean Skies for Tomorrow initiative, which is a multilateral initiative. He is a strong believer in sustainable aviation fuel and got us the early momentum in that field. And today is the CEO heading up and rethinking how air freight and smart freight can be done in a sustainable manner. Christoph, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, as I mentioned, you were, of course, the executive member on the board of the World Economic Forum. And as part of that, you initiated the Clean Skies of Tomorrow's program a few years ago. Tell us a little bit about that and the origin story there.
Yes, happy to do so. So that was 2018. I think the headlines at these times were about flight shaming, and and the whole aviation sector that has always deemed to be a hard to abate sector, so which may come last in the decarbonization journey, was afraid that public sentiment went against aviation as a climate polluter, as a primary climate polluter, and parents had, and that included us actually, had at the dinner table a conversation with their kids that flying is not good for climate. So that was Fridays for Futures and Greta Thunberg, and we should rather have our next vacation somewhere close by. Yeah, and I'm a strong believer in a connected world, in a multilateral and connected world, and believe that we actually have to fly more and not less to stay connected and on one page. And I think we should also recognize in our hemisphere that there's billions of people who haven't flown. Yeah, and we can't deny the privilege to be part of one world, and therefore I'm personally a strong believer that making aviation sustainable is an important task of our generation.
Now that's very interesting. You mentioned Flixcom, as it was known in Sweden back in 2018, early days, right? Most airline CEOs at that time were saying, "Oh, this is fake news. This is not my business. I should not look at it." Weren't you ahead of time in those days?
I think the take-up was different in different geographies. I would say in Europe, this was taken a lot more seriously. But I think it was dawning on everybody that there may be a generational change. But we were ahead of the game in a way that we looked around and saw different initiatives here and there to address the issue, and felt that there was a global platform missing in which pathways could be conceived, could be created and agreed. And this was the birthplace for the birth time for Clean Skies of Tomorrow. I think it was indeed ahead of the curve. Yeah, so many airline executives or any aviation industry people didn't think that this would actually take off, but I think it did.
And what got the early momentum for Clean Skies of Tomorrow? Who were the initial backers? What got you excited and entering?
the important thing about all World Economic Forum platforms are that they are across the whole value chain, and so they include producers as well as airlines, airports, but it's also banks, governments, etc. And I think we brought an early momentum was that in I think it was June 2019. So we brought everybody at the Paris Air Show, and so we had and we brought at the same time NGOs and civil society into the room, and felt we needed in a way a technical orientation. So there needed to be a technology roadmap and understanding about how fast and at what cost and which kind of pathways and feedstocks sustainable aviation fuel could take off. It was clear it had to be put into context with other pathways like battery electric flying and hydrogen flying. And we actually built a parallel initiative, Target True Zero, which looked at that in a lot of detail. And it needed to include the institutions like ICAO, IATA, and others who were also have been trying for a decade to put more emphasis on innovation and on building, basically bridging the gap, between what was known as feasible efficiency pathways towards really what was at that stage a target of minus 50% by 2050, and carbon neutral flying. So and given there was a Paris Agreement of which aviation was not a part of, so we knew we needed to do more if aviation wouldn't lose a license to operate.
Right, absolutely. And you, of course, led that with Clean Sky Tomorrow. One of the primary focuses for you and your team at that time was fuels and sustainable aviation fuels.
Yes.
Why do you think that is the most critical method to get the industry to net zero in the short to medium term?
Yeah, so if you go back to the old IATA charts, so 2014 and 15, so it was clear that there are different contributors. So one important contributor is obviously continuous increase in airframe efficiency and engine efficiency, and from one generation to the next, and the reorganization of the airspace, the traffic efficiency. That's another big topic, but it was also already clear that hydrogen electric flying, because of the various constraints, would only may cover an increasing amount of aviation, but would be constrained when it comes to stage length and plane capacity. So sustainable aviation fuel would cover in a net zero transformation, would cover at least 50%. Yeah, so there's you need a drop in fuel that is high energy, has a high energy intensity to maintain intercontinental flight, and it's out of that necessity almost, physics, that sustainable aviation fuel is a needed pillar of net of zero carbon flying.
Very interesting. And one of the things you've highlighted is the power to liquid methodology.
Yeah.
For getting to SAF, not necessarily biofuels and others. Why is that so critical?
Well, as you rightly say, so there's two pathways, and the bio pathways are more advanced when it comes to TRL levels, so technology readiness levels. So the so-called HEFA, which is based on waste lipids, vegetable oil, used cooking oil, etc. That is actually available today, but it's only very small quantities, and you have a collection challenge in many places. So and that could basically, this pathway could only be responsible for maybe 10% of the total aviation fuel markets, and there's other bio-based pathways like alcohol to jet or gasification Fischer-Tropsch, which all work on agricultural residue, so waste in one way, or bio-waste in one way or the other, so to avoid any food versus fuel competition. So they're either limited in feedstock scale, or it's actually super costly to collect them. Yeah. So, you need to have a huge catchment area to come to that. And so power to liquid has, based on renewable energy and a carbon source. So hydrogen from renewable energy and a carbon source is seen as the most the prominent way, and post 2030 or 2035 may take 60-70% of the total share in aviation fuel, but it has it's not as mature as a technology, so it really, demo stage plans. So there's, of course, it's tested in flights, but in this demo stage plans, but they are currently at super limited scale, and the bigger plans that may provide fuel from PtL may only come about in 2017 onwards, 27 onwards. Yeah.
That's a very good point you mentioned. Right? They're limited in scalability, and infrastructure indeed seems to be need to overcome that.
Power to liquid is projected, when you look at the cost curves, to break even by 2035 onwards, 2035 to 2040, depending on the assumption for carbon price. Yeah. And there's 2 or 3 big questions. So number one is the amount of electricity you need in order to generate hydrogen is significant, because it's very energy intensive process to disaggregate the water molecule, and so I think there are some numbers that in order to basically to power a normal power to liquid plant, which has like 30,000 tons per year output, you need a huge amount of energy. That energy would otherwise basically provide electricity for like 2 or 3 million U.S. households. So it's enormous amount of electricity that you need. Currently in many countries we have an electricity gap, especially if we can't do gas as we thought we would be doing. So basically there is an electricity gap, and we also need a lot of space, in order for all the solar plants and all the windmills, in order to generate electricity. And then we have indeed we need to make this. Then we need a carbon source, and the carbon source, that's the other ingredient. So there are transitory ways like sequestering carbon sources from like steel plants or from other industrial plants, cement plants, etc. Or it's direct air capture, but direct air capture again is expensive, and it will only come down over the next 15 to 20 years. And that's why, currently sustainable aviation PtL is at least 5 to 8 times more expensive on a per gallon basis than kerosene, and this may go down over the next 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, we definitely need scale. One of the criticisms has been that directing SAF towards aviation would take it away from road transport or shipping and other types of freight, which of course you're an expert in. Is that a real criticism?
It is. There is in these transition days, as we are building our whole industrial framework on electricity rather than fossil fuels. So there is definitely competition for electricity, even for more users, than electricity for powering industrial processes or for households, etc. So when it comes to other mobility or transport needs, so for trucks, the future fuel is more and more electricity as well. So today there is biofuel being used in electric trucks, but given electric trucks can actually very efficiently run on batteries, potentially the very big ones on hydrogen at some stage. So they don't need a drop in fuel really. Yeah. So when it comes to shipping, the likely future fuels are e-methanol and green ammonia. So hydrogen is a common denominator. Yeah. So there is the electricity competition, but we need to source electricity from the globe anyway. So we will, the US is now has now introduced the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, and so we'll actually a big leap forward toward a hydrogen economy. We will need to go through those places which have very low electricity costs in terms of wind, like in Western Texas or in California, or go in to the Middle East or to the North Africa or southern Spain, or when it comes to wind, to Canada or Scandinavia, in order to build that. And then actually the space requirement for powering the total aviation industry is a fraction of the desert space that you have in Middle East or in Sahara. So it's really about organizing global supply chains. And the good news is that actually a lot more countries that today are not fuel producer, because they don't have the natural endowment for fossil fuels, can become fuel producers. And that will also have a big effect on geopolitics.
That's very interesting you mentioned, because geopolitics is, what's governing the world right now, and is the main thing. At a recent presentation you did at ICAO, you said that up to 10% of all fuel can be SAF in Europe by 2030. How can this be done?
Well, the 10% is, there are folks that actually think it can be much more, and in order to go to zero carbon globally, it needs to be higher than that. The fact is that we have lead times for permitting and for financing plans. And, this is a big CapEx finance challenge. So the financing industry needs to get their heads around a new asset class. Yeah. But the 10% can still actually be done with known biopathways like waste lipids and waste oils, with technologies that are more advanced. And here by 2030, power to liquid will probably be on the smaller range, maybe 3%. At the end, this was our recommendation to refuel EU aviation, to the European Green Deal policy effort. At the end, it's like 6%. But what we also see is that beyond the mandated 6%, we see corporate commitments, especially on the freight sector, to go over and above that, also by tech companies that want to decarbonize their Scope 3 emissions. And so we are actually quite bullish that it can actually come close to the 10%, but that means that we need a rapid over the next 2 or 3 years, there needs to be a rapid ramp up of production. Currently, it's not so much demand constraint. Demand is there, either mandated demand or corporate demand from companies who want to attack their Scope 3 emissions. Now we need to actually create a big envelope to finance supply. Yeah, technologies are there, probably space is there, but the amount of plans that are currently in planning they're actually getting close to the 6 to 10%. So we're not that far away when we project the build of plants in Europe or out of Europe with supply to Europe.
Absolutely. I think that the whole supply chain equation is critical in solving this. The other is this multilateral support. We recently had the ICAO summit discussing this. We've also had IATA sharing their net zero plans. World Economic Forum does it as well. What do you think needs to be done by the leaders at the helm of these governments and multilateral organizations to accelerate this change so potentially we can get to 10% by 2030?
Yeah, I think this over the last year or two, what we started in Clean Skies and together with others, when it was all these roadmaps were not there yet, and a lot more people were critical if it was achievable. So now there is actually a consensus about the build up. So I would not doubt that in North America and in Europe. So there will be a lot more supply being financed and being generated. I'm not so sure if at the rest of world or in the global south, where actually the natural endowments are, this will actually come across at the same place, so in the same speed. So we need really finance investment funds that look at the best places in the world to finance production plans, and then to work with policymakers in countries beyond US and Europe in order to scale demand, including in Asia, in India and China. So we've done with the World Economic Forum a year and a half with all stakeholders in India to enable India to be a SAF producer. So there needs to be a convincing effort now for that there's something in those in emerging markets that they can connect development and the economic opportunity and the jobs opportunity for producing for becoming a SAF producer.
Right, I think you're right. There's a lot of effort that needs to be done. What do you think about some of the newer e-fuels from CO2 to SAF from 12 or Air Company and LanzaJet? Do you think these are going to be a significant contribution to the supply going forward?
Yeah, so I think they fit into the four pathways, and they may be at different points of time in the TRL basically continuum. And LanzaJet, I think, is in alcohol to jet and gasification Fischer-Tropsch. So they're building demo plants, and I think they will be an important contributor. So we need all of it. Yeah. So it's not like one technical pathway. I think over time, I think PtL, when we have real investment into direct air capture, into carbon sources, and the production of hydrogen has come down to a level that is projected $1 per kilogram hydrogen. Then at that stage, PtL may be very scalable. But all the others, basically bio-based, 12 is actually a PtL fuel. So CO2 to PtL is basically the carbon source. I mean, capturing CO2 to put it together with hydrogen into a PtL. All these are pathways which are very much will be part of the mix.
That's interesting, and I'm sure more suppliers mean the cost is going down. But you earlier mentioned that SAF can cost 5 to 8 times the cost of normal fuel. Do you believe that the cost trajectory of SAF would follow that of solar? Very expensive to very cheap within the next decade. Is that realistic?
When it comes to PtL, so 70% of the cost structure of sustainable aviation fuel is actually energy cost. Yeah, so it does follow the cost of solar very much. Yeah, and if you go to places where you already today are at a 1 to 2 cent per US cent per kilowatt hour, like Australia and Africa or Chile. Also with wind electricity costs in the same area, so you can actually you can become very competitive, and actually shipping fuel around the globe is not that costly. Yeah, so shipping hydrogen or transporting hydrogen is a lot more costly. But yes, I'm actually very convinced that solar and hydrogen are projected to come down another factor of 5 to 8 over the next 10 years, and I think you will indeed see PtL and other sustainable aviation fuels be competitive with kerosene.
I'm hoping we get to that day sooner than later. Definitely not by 2050, much earlier.
No, 2035 to 2040 is actually what most people project.
Yeah, what's interesting is that another airline that recently released its net zero roadmap was EasyJet, which ironically puts a lot more emphasis on zero carbon aircraft than SAF, primarily owing to the lack of supply and the cost. Do you think that fair, or is that just EasyJet doing its one-off thing?
No, I think EasyJet puts a lot of effort into hydrogen flying, and I think EasyJet has a different business model, so that less a hub airline than a point-to-point airline. And I think my expectation is that the point-to-point traffic, may actually have a higher bias towards hydrogen flying. So smaller aircraft, smaller distances, and if the energy density of hydrogen, of batteries, and then for hydrogen you need to redesign the aircraft actually. But if an Airbus wants to basically have a one-aisle, single-aisle aircraft of commercial scale by 2035. So I think EasyJet is looking into that direction, and for their segment of the market, point-to-point, smaller aircraft, etc., I think it could be a very good bet.
Indeed, yeah, I think it fits the unique model there, and a big, large hub-and-spoke airline like British Airways might have a different model.
Indeed, so they will probably be more SAF oriented, and less hydrogen oriented.
Right. On that note, which airline do you think is doing a very good job with its net zero goals and getting there?
Well, I think we see a lot of corporate deals also. I think like Microsoft or like Deloitte or Amazon, etc. So they are working with airlines and also with actually fuel producers. And we do as Smart Freight Center work a lot on the so-called book and claim guidance, so which is also another business model and a pathway, so where you decouple the physical flow and the flow of environmental attributes, and so somebody can invest into sustainable aviation fuel and claim the environmental benefits. And we see some airlines being very active in that. So we just had a workshop last week with United and Alaska Airlines, and within Clean Skies, KLM and Lufthansa, and we were very active, British Airways. So we see actually among the top airlines, I think Finnair and SAS traditionally were very active, as well as Delta. So I think we see quite a cohort of very active players. In India, it's SpiceJet. Singapore Airlines. Singapore is building their own hub. So I think most airlines actually have jumped now on a bandwagon, and so it has become a movement, which is great.
It's interesting you mentioned India, because I was recently talking to an airline executive in India, and he told me, listen, Shashank, our regulator currently does not require us to have a minimum amount of SAF. When they do require it, we will think about how to get there. So it seems like there's a disparity between different regions of the world. You've got, Scandinavia and Northern Europe, which is potentially leading in terms of research and technology. And then you've got other areas of the world where this is not necessarily a top priority.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned India. So as a World Economic Forum, so we did actually with all stakeholders, including SpiceJet and Indigo and others, Vistara, and basically all the major airports and fuel producers, biofuel and PtL, a major study that said for India, actually 10% sustainable aviation fuel are well reachable. And then the Indian government actually put together, looked at the outputs from the Clean Skies of Tomorrow report, done with like 60 Indian players. And then they repeated this they basically looked at this under the guidance of, again, Boeing and Shell and Indian Oil, etc., and confirmed that. And basically my understanding is that, I don't know what happened over the last couple of months, that there's actually quite a movement in India to become a sustainable aviation fuel producer. Yeah. And I had a conversation earlier today with Sasol that actually is also very interested to become a producer in India. And Praj Industries on you mentioned LanzaJet. Yeah. So there's actually quite a number of players that actually think that India could be an important one. I've recently done, or we've done studies with different parties across Africa. So there's a study on how to work on how to do this in South Africa, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Zambia. ICAO is doing Act SAF, which basically saying there's a program, a universal program. Trinidad Tobago was part of it. I think Colombia is now, and Dominican Republic earlier, to look at the SAF potential from waste. Yeah. So, basically food waste, all kinds of waste. I mean, from special, non-edible, feedstocks, and from the endowment of sun and wind. Yeah. So I do feel this traditionally this has been North American and European led, but it becomes a global movement, and there's an opportunity to democratize in a way sustainable aviation, because many more countries can become producers compared to the fossil fuel age.
Right. No, I think that's very well stated, Jeff. And it's really heartening to know India is turning into a production hub for SAF and other fuels, because then that will definitely have an impact on the airlines there as well.
Absolutely.
I speak with a lot of airline executives, and they seem to be at different levels in trying to do things. You've got like I said, Northern European airlines of the world, and then you've got others which are just starting out. What would your advice be to an airline CEO that's just starting out to formulate its sustainability strategy?
At this stage, they're no longer first in line. So there's a lot of advice to be taken and pathways to get. I think ICAO is moving to a 2050 long-term goal. I mean, it's now IATA. I mean, a few years ago, IATA was skeptical. Now IATA has a net zero roadmap. It's really about learning from its best practice sharing. Yeah. So, and I would say I'm sure, I mean, there's few airline CEOs that would at this stage say, "Oh, it's not for us." Yeah. So I think many ICAO, IATA, ACI, they all offer now education and analytics on this. So there are many reports out there which have also become a lot more specific. So they're country by country. So I think I can only advise them to do their homework. Yeah, get a team that actually focuses on that. Talk to people in the industry, get some expert advice. I think there's folks like ICAO, the World Economic Forum, others, Smart Freight Center, actually, that can GIZ of Germany. Yeah, so RSB, the Roundtable for Sustainable Biomaterial, that they can get help from and see how their individual pathway to sustainable aviation future can be designed.
Absolutely. I think you're right. We don't have to reinvent the wheel anymore. There are lots of precedents here, and airlines looking to get started can leverage, stand on the shoulders of giants, and
absolutely,
and kickstart their journey here. Now, the final bit of this interview is what I call the rapid fire round, in which we get to know you a bit more personally. Everyone knows your papers and your thinking and your vision. But let's get to know you a bit better at the end, and we'll start with something simple, Christoph. Like what's your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book. I love Salman Rushdie. Yeah, so I was very sad about the fact that he was, he was injured lately. So I like The Moor's Last Sigh or Midnight Children.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course, deeply moving book. What about your favorite airline?
Well, I like the Lufthansa Group, yeah, including Austrian. My wife thinks Austrian is the best airline.
Is she Austrian?
No, she's German, but she thinks Austrian Airlines is particularly well designed. Yeah, very friendly.
Very nice.
Folks.
Okay, I've heard that about Swiss. Good to know about
Austrian. Swiss is great as well. So it's the same group. Yeah.
Okay, what about your favorite city or favorite green city?
My favorite green city. I'm working out of Amsterdam, so I love Amsterdam. Amsterdam is a great place. I must say, I have a lot of, I like India a lot. Yeah. So I like Mumbai and I like actually Bangalore.
Very interesting. Yes, definitely great weather, in Bangalore as well. What about what is something that you want to learn?
I would like to learn Spanish well, so I've learned Spanish earlier, but I feel I can, I don't speak enough. I spoke a lot in years ago. I want to learn that better. I want to learn. I like cooking, and I want to upgrade that as well.
Nice. Okay, then we should have a cookout together sometime because I like to cook myself. What is something green you do in your everyday life that you're proud of?
Well, we were a very early adopter in electromobility. Yeah, so we had an electric car in 2014 when it was really few people were looking at that, and we have been running electric cars ever since. And I actually have been evangelist for electric cars. And I like public transport. So I always, wherever I go, I use public transport.
Well, I guess you live in Amsterdam, so you probably ride your bike a lot as well.
Right. When I'm there, I'm actually, I use a lot of, I ride more trams because I would have to buy a bike there. But I rent bikes as well.
And while staying on that sustainability topic, is there a book on sustainability you would like to recommend to our listeners?
Yes. So I read last summer Johan Rockström, which is Breaking Boundaries. And Johan Rockström is Stockholm Environmental Institute and many others, IPCC connected. And I think you need to look at sustainability from a science lens. And he describes planetary boundaries. And I think it's very important, insightful to look at that.
Very nice. It's going to be on my reading list today because the last good one I read was Bill Gates, a book around technology solutions to climate change. Who is a leader you look up to?
A leader I look up to? Well, I think there's there's like Nelson Mandela, but I must say I'm still in the camp that likes Angela Merkel a lot. Yeah. I like her because, the way that she was very steadfast in her convictions, and she was a rock in a guiding light for many times, and didn't actually have much of her, put her own persona always behind the important issues she was fighting for.
That is very, very true. And finally, what is the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice is, before you take any important executive or, let's say, personal or executive decisions, sleep over it.
That is definitely right. Patience always helps.
And a clear mind.
Indeed, Christoph. I really enjoyed this chat. Thank you very much for sharing some of the perspectives. It's good to have someone on the show who has a multilateral perspective, working with multiple organizations and governments. And I definitely feel more hopeful about the future of sustainable aviation after speaking with you. Thank you, Christoph.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was very happy to join.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. We hope you liked it and will share it with your network. Please also leave us a review. Awareness is the key to a green future. Your support will help our insights on sustainable aviation reach a wider audience. In addition, for every single listen of this podcast, we will plant a tree. And for every single review, we will plant 50 trees. You can also write to us at podcast@simpliflying.com. And for more content on sustainable aviation, please visit our website, simpliflying.com, and join the movement.